So it is April, and that means it is time for the new rfantasy bingo board to drop. It has dropped. I have planned my TBR, and it's time to tell you what I'm going to be reading for rfantasy this year. Now, I will say, I did not do that great with last year's bingo board. I really didn't. I think I lost sight of what I planned, and honestly, I don't think I picked the books very well. I didn't think about what I was going to be reading throughout the year anyway, what I really wanted to get to. And I think I tried to fill it with books to force me to read those books versus putting books on that I was most excited to read. And that was a mistake. And it meant that I failed last year. So this year we're turning over a new leaf. We are doing it a new way. We are picking books I'm very excited to read, books I really want to get to, books that work for the prompts that I'm like dying to pull off the shelves and read. And hopefully that will help me be much more successful this year. Let's dive into the bingo board. Let's dive into the prompts. And I'm not going to go into too in-depth synopses for any of these books because obviously there's 25 of them, but I will explain why I picked them for each prompt and like why they work. The first prompt on the bingo board is Knights and Paladins, and I lucked out because a buddy read that I'm doing in April is Paladin's Strength. I mean Paladin right there in the title. This is by T. Kingfisher. It's the second book in the series. I read the first book 2 months ago now, a month and a half ago. And I really do like T. Kingfisher's fantasy romance. It leans very cozy, and I think cozy fantasy romance is definitely a mix of different literary elements that really work for me personally. In the series, we follow 4 paladins. They are from a different, like one of the gods, but their gods have died. And that has left them kind of adrift. And they now are under the Temple of the White Rat to kind of keep from going berserk. And we follow each paladin in each book. This one, I believe, is Isfan's book. And the first book is Stephen's book. And I really did enjoy that. And I'm excited to dive into this. But I already know I'm going to be reading this later in the month. So how perfect was that? As soon as I saw the word paladins, I was like, done. Easy one to fill. For Hidden Gem, which is a book with under 1,000 ratings, which I went on Goodreads and checked. This one has about 950. I am going with Earthflown. This is a book I got last year for TAR, didn't get to it, and it's actually on my spring TBR too. So there's a lot of reasons why I had plans to pick this up sooner rather than later. It is a sci-fi romance, and it's LGBTQIA+, which is even more exciting to be picking that up and giving it a try. And it has chapter art. There's art in this book. So I'm really hoping I enjoy this hidden gem. For published in the 80s, I saw this prompt and I had a little bit of a crisis. I was like, what in the world am I going to read that was published in the 80s? I don't read a lot of older released books. And I was struggling. With this, and I messaged a friend. I phoned a friend, Leandra the TBR0, and said, what sci-fis were out in the 80s? I need direction. I need help. And she went, Octavia Butler was writing in the 80s. And I went, really? I didn't know that. This was something I did not realize. And honestly, I've been wanting to try an Octavia Butler book. So I went and looked at what was published in the 80s, and I decided to pick up Wild Seed. I was slightly hoping Kindred would have worked for this because I've been dying to read Kindred, but that was published in 1979. I just missed the cutoff for Kindred, but that's okay. I'm excited to try this novel as my first Octavia E. Butler book too. For the prompt of high fashion, I am kind of stretching this, but I do think it fits within the realm of what the prompt is meant to do. And this book has thread magic in it. So I've decided to put on Win Witch by Susan Dennard. One of the witches in this book is a thread witch. And I mean, she's not the only one. There are other thread witches in this book too. So I do think it works, and it is a pretty large part of the book that Azult can see the threads that bind life together. So it's not necessarily threads with fabric, but it is still thread magic, and I'm gonna count it. Plus, this is already on my April TBR. So again, I'm trying to work smarter, not harder here, friends. We're trying. And for Down with the System, as soon as I read this prompt, I went, wait, I recently talked about a book that I recently got an arc of that really was about dismantling a system. And I actually comped it to Ashes of the Sun when I was telling my patrons about it when I got the arc. And that is A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwen. This book is not out yet, but I am blessed to get the arc of this. And it really, really gives me those vibes. You have Nina and Patrick who grew up together. They find out they have an aptitude for magic. They go into the Magical Artisans Guild. They find out something that is kind of rocking the foundation to which they know exist, and they end up on different sides of this revolution. This book comes out on July 1st, so hopefully I will read it before then since I have the arc, but also, if you want to read it July 1st. Impossible Places is the next prompt, and it said to pick something that would make a physicist's head hurt. And I did struggle with this until I remembered that Watermoon definitely would work for this. So in Watermoon, we follow a pawn shop that only some people can find. And you can only find it if you're meant to see it. And we follow two people who come into the pawn shop and have to find something that goes missing. But at the end of the description, not only would a magical pawn shop be a little bit out of the world of physics, but it also says that they ride by way of rain puddles, rides on paper cranes, bridges between midnight and morning, and a night market in the clouds. All of that sounds like it would be against physics. And everyone has been talking about this book. I'm feeling the FOMO. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I really hope that I will. For a book with parts, I am going with a book that I actually just bought on the weekend. I didn't actually buy it. I got it at a book exchange. So I got it for free, and it's one that I have had my eye on for quite some time, and that is Wayward. This is witchy. I've heard it has a feminist vibe to it, which typically is common of witchy books, especially when they lean historical. I don't typically love historical fantasy, but in the subgenre of witches and how history has villainized strong women and made them to seem as witches to basically condemn women from not sticking to the status quo, I do tend to like that. So this should work for me in theory. But it does have parts. It has 3 parts in this book. I had to double check. They have pretty little pages that designate it, and there are 3 of them in this book. So definitely works for this prompt. The next prompt was Gods and Pantheons, and immediately, my most anticipated release for April jumped right into my head, and that is Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner. This is the final book in the God Killer series, obviously by the fact that the first book is God Killer and the series is called Fallen Gods, shows you that there would be gods in this book. There are many, 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 many gods in this book, but I do think in this final book, we are going to focus on one specifically, and that is Skedi. And I adore Skedi. He is the god of white lies. And I have fallen in love with Skedi for 2 books, and I am excited, but also very nervous to read this final book. I have a buddy read with Leandra and Julie to read this book, and I really hope this series ends in a satisfying way. I've given 5 stars to the first 2, so hopefully this is a full 5-star series. For last in a series, I want to finish out a series that I read the first book of back in November. I really want to get to this final book in this duology before I forget what happened in the first book. So I need to get to this sooner rather than later anyway, and that is A City of Mirth and Malice. The first book being House of Bane and Blood. This is a mafia-style fantasy romance, which if you've been paying attention recently, I am loving mafia-style books and billionaire romances. Either in contemporary romance, dark romance, fantasy romance, doesn't matter. I'm loving it all the way around, and I really would love to know how we finish out this series after the first book. For book club or read along, I went to the Google shelf that is provided by rfantasy for all of their past book clubs and read alongs, and I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled just to see what I would be interested in reading, and then I saw The Tainted Cup. I realized fairly recently, again, that I really do like the genre blend of fantasy and mystery, and that is what this is. And I have heard so many people singing the praises of this book. It's also a retelling-ish vibe of Sherlock, which I love a retelling. So there's a lot of reasons why I will like this book. And the sequel just came out. So I feel like it's a really nice time to dive into this because if I like the first book, I can go right into the second book. I was really excited to see the prompt of parent protagonist because I do love a fantasy novel where the character, our main character, is a bit more mature, has seen a little bit more of life. And obviously a parent would fit that bill. A book that I recently found out the main character or one of the main characters was a bit more mature, a parent in some way, is A Natural History of Dragons. Again, you will see that I'm picking books that really are into what I'm currently really vibing with. I was really vibing with Mafia books. I've been really vibing with dragon books. Dragons are currently where I am having the most fun. And so many of my friends recently just buddy read this, and all of them had a great time with this book. So I do think I'm really going to love this. And again, I'm really in my dragon era after reading Fourth Wing. For epistolatory, I am going with a book that has diary entries in it and is actually mostly told via diary entries, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The final book just came out in this series. So I would not be shocked that if I love this, I just binged the series. I know a lot of people after seeing my Fourth Wing binge recommended that this would be a good series to binge next, especially since, again, it just kind of rounded out. It's a darker, cozy fantasy series, which I do like the idea of that because I do like cozy fantasy, but I also like books with stakes. So you give me like a Venn diagram of those two things, and I do think I'm really going to like this book. Published in 2025, what a great prompt, because I have been saying all year that 2025 publishing is where it's at. The books coming out this year are fabulous. And truly, I'm probably going to fill this prompt over and over and over again because I have so many anticipated releases that I want to read this year. But I'm going to put one on that just came out yesterday as of me filming, April 1st, and that is Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. This is 3 children who are all like in line to inherit this magical pharmaceutical company. I think it's a pharmaceutical company. Anyway, it's like a magical company. And each of them are really like good to take over, but like which one will get the new CEO spot now that their father has perished, and they have to like compete to become the next in line to run this magical company. Olivia Blake is an auto-buy author for me at this point, so I'm thrilled to be seeing an Olivia Blake on this TBR, and actually you're going to see Olivia Blake a little bit later in another way. I know we can't double up prompts or authors, but we can for the short story collection part, and you will see Olivia Blake's name again when we get to the short stories. For an author of color, I have decided to pick up Death of the Author. This book has been staring at me since I bought it a couple of months ago. It is staring me down. It is like, you must read this. It's a book within a book. It's sci-fi. There are a lot of things happening, and I do think I'm really going to enjoy this book. It really sounds like something that is completely up my street, and the reviews for this book from the people that I agree with in sci-fi are great. Also, this version, beautiful. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. Even the hardback is amazing. This is actually the book that the author in the book is writing. Like, how cool is that? The next prompt we have is a small press or indie pub. I actually just got an ARC that totally fits for this, so I decided to throw it on this list as well because I knew I was going to be reading it when I got the ARC of it, and that is A Curse of Death by Ellie Owens. Truly, I know very little about this book. It wasn't an ARC I requested, but the author reached out and offered it to me, and honestly, it looked really intriguing and interesting, and since I'm trying out more fantasy romance this year, I decided, you know what, this is the perfect time to try it for our fantasy. This comes out on May 8th, but again, since it's an ARC, I am hoping to read it prior to that. I do try to read my ARCs before they come out. I'm not always successful, but we try our best here. For biopunk, I decided to pick up a classic, knowing that the newest movie in this series is going to be coming out in the summer. I do love the movies, but I have never read the book, and that is Jurassic Park. I feel like it's time to definitely, finally read Jurassic Park. I'm sure the books are fantastic. I mean, if I love the movies, I can't see that the book would not be as good or better than the movies. The book is usually better. You will have noticed, if you have seen last year's Our Fantasy list, remember I failed. We're not going to talk too much about it, but this book was on it, and I didn't read it. So this year, we're actually going to read it. And this is for elves and dwarves, and I'm going to be reading Blood of Elves, which is the first book in the Witcher series. I don't remember how I got a hold of this. I feel like I got it in either a little free library or like a used book sale. And I don't know if the Witcher series is going to for sure be for me, but I figured since it was either free or very, very cheap, that was the reasonings I picked it up, that it would be worth a try. And obviously it has elves. It's right there in the title. For LGBTQIA+ protagonist, I am going to be reading Winter's Orbit. This is a sci-fi romance. I have not read a lot of sci-fi romance. I've read a couple, but I do feel like I would like to dive more into that genre blend, especially while I'm in my fantasy romance era. I feel like sci-fi romance and fantasy romance are very close together in vibes. I bought this fairly recently, and when I put it in a book haul, people were very excited to see it and were singing its praises. So hopefully I love it just as much as all of them. For 5 SFF short stories, I'm going to read a short story collection. I think that will be easier for me to get through than trying to pick 5 short stories and compile them myself. Plus, there is a short story collection coming out that really should have been on my anticipated releases list when I did the video a couple of weeks back, but I found out about it afterward. And that is The Secret Romantics Book of Magic. One of the authors in this is Olivia Blake, which is somewhat how this came to be on my, field of vision. But I have read a book that is very similar to this, which is In These Hallowed Halls. And by the covers, I think they are being published by the same group of people. I don't actually know that to be sure, so take that with a grain of salt. That one was a dark academia short story collection, which I did really enjoy. This one is a fantasy romance short story collection. And in it, there are 12 short stories, so I will definitely read at least 5. I will probably read all 12. For Stranger in a Strange Land, I'm going to go with The Last One by Rachel Housel Hall. And the reason I think this fits, which I will say from synopses, it's hard to know for sure if it fits, but this synopsis really makes me think that it does. So it says, thrown into a desolate land of sickness and unnatural beasts, Kai wakes in a woods with no idea who she is or how she got there. So she is basically just thrown into this woods. That sounds like a stranger in a strange land. The woods is the strange land. She is the stranger. There are beasts. There are things. I'm sure she meets a man because it's romantasy. But also on the back of this book, it says there are gods, there are humans, and then there's her. So that makes me believe this would also work for the gods prompt if you are looking for other options for that as well. But this is what I'm going to use for Stranger in a Strange Land because she sounds like a stranger in a strange woods. Woods is land, winning. The next prompt is to recycle a prompt from a previous board. I went to 2024 because I've already pulled books for those prompts and I failed. And I wanted to read a lot of those books. So I'm just going to recycle the one that makes the most sense for me, and that is the Dark Academia prompt. You know I love Dark Academia, and I was really sad that I didn't get to read this last year, and that is The Will of the Many. The next book comes out in November, and I need to read this before the next book comes out because truly I think I will love this and want to dive right into that book. So this makes the most sense. If I don't like this, I will be shocked, honestly, so shocked. This has great reviews from those who like Dark Academia, and I do think this fits with the kind of Dark Academia that I like. For a cozy book, I've decided to put on a book that's on my 25 and 25 because this year, again, we're working smarter, not harder. We're really leaning into what we already want to read so that we are successful, and that is Rewitched. This, I believe, is for my one-word title for 25 and 25, and I know it's a cozy fantasy. I got this at Christmas time, and it sounds like a good time. It really gives me the cozy vibes. Just off the cover, the vibes are cozy. They really feel fall, so I would not be surprised if I hold off till the fall to pick this one up. Generic title has a list of words that are very generic in a lot of fantasy titles because we have said this many times that a lot of especially romantasy titles sound very much the same. One of the words was blood, and I know I'm going to be reading Bloodguard as a buddy read at some point this year with the besties, so that made sense to throw this on knowing I was going to be reading it this year anyway. Will this be my type of fantasy romance? Unsure, but it definitely works for this prompt, obviously with the word blood. And our fantasy, wanting to make my life easier, decided to have a prompt that is not a reading prompt. It's a lifestyle prompt. It's to try something new. And I've decided to tentatively put this activity in this spot because I got this for Christmas. I actually thought I would have dived into it already, but it just hasn't been the right time. But I do have a crochet kit where I can crochet dragons. I do not crochet, but I saw this and thought it would be really fun to make dragons. I'm in my dragon era. Like, this seems like a great cozy task to try out and to start doing. However, if I want to start a new activity that is not that one, I will switch it out and do that instead. We are on the last prompt of the R Fantasy board, and to say that when I saw this prompt, I let out a sigh, a big long sigh, because we all know I don't like boat books, and pirates tend to be on boats. They do. They tend to be on boats. I already know I'm going to have to read Tress of the Emerald Sea as part of my Cosmere read-along, and I have been putting Tress in almost every year-long prompt board that has a boat prompt in it. So we are just going to continue to do that with this one as well and put Tress of the Emerald Sea. I still need to read Warbreaker as part of the Cosmere read-along, and then I'm on to Tress. So I should be reading Tress, I would say, sometime this summer. That's kind of when I think I will reach it. This does not have boats that are in water. Apparently they are like sky ships, but there are pirates. And I don't know if that will make it any better for me. It's hard to say. We'll find out. But I don't like a boat book. And therefore I usually do not like pirate books. But I'm already having to read this one. So we'll put it in. We'll slot it in. We'll put it here. But with that, that is my 25 books that I will be reading for our fantasy. Well, 24 books and a fun activity where I make dragons. I hope these help you fill these prompts, because some of these prompts are really easy to fill and some were definitely harder for me to fill. And I hope this gives you some ideas if you want to dive into our fantasy as well, or if you just want to root me on to actually finishing an our fantasy bingo board this year. Can I do it? I think I can. I feel like a lot of these books are for other projects that I already know I'm going to be reading, or that I'm very excited to dive into. I hope you have as much faith in me as I currently have in myself. Check back in like 6 months and see if I still have this level of, sureness that I will finish it, because probably not. That's typically how these things go. As the months go on, I'm like, oh, right, I need to read those books. But this year, I'm really trying to do better. I'm really, really trying. If you made it all the way to the end of the video but have nothing to say down in the comments, let's leave a dragon emoji. I feel like I've been using that one a lot lately because I'm in my dragon era, but I am going to be crocheting dragons. So I just feel like it's appropriate. Also, it's a fantasy bingo board. Fantasy, dragons, they go together. They are best friends. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, friends.